kind of kick things off, maybe describe what is Zenloop and what's your role in the company?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, my name is Andy Mura, and I'm currently responsible for marketing and partnerships at Zenloop and CX1. So Zenloop is our product. And what is Zenloop? Zenloop is a CX action management platform, meaning that we allow companies to collect customer feedback at every touch point of their journey and process that feedback in such a way that this is immediately conducive to action, meaning that every piece of information, every survey, every opinion or anything you collect from customers, so all the insights are translated automatically into either automated workflows or internal project management processes, so that we translate automatically insights into a reaction to customers and actions, no matter how many customers, right? So obviously, if you have a small coffee place somewhere, you have 10, 20 customers, you can talk to them individually and you can, of course, address their concerns. But when you have thousands and thousands of customers, you can't possibly manually react to every opinion, and you can't take into account all the opinions for your decision-making processes. And that's what we actually allow you to do. On the one hand, to be able to react in the right way to every single survey and comment. So in order to maximize win-back programs if the customer is unhappy, or loyalty programs if the customer is happy, and referrals, obviously. And at the same time, our system allows you to categorize and define priorities and key drivers that would need to actually feed your innovation management programs. So, and then the system automatically kickstarts projects for teams to improve on processes or product or services. And obviously, because of Zenloop, we also close the loop with the customer, allowing companies to get back to the customers in terms of expectation management. For example, okay, you complained about X, we're working on it, we have an accountable person, it's going to take a while, we'll get back to you as soon as we improve it on that. So expectation management, and also keeping customers in the loop wherever there's a resolution to a problem, that they know, they're aware, okay, something has been done, so my feedback was taken into account, they worked on it, and now there's a solution. So closing the loop at the end.
And who is Zenloop best for? Who is the target customer?
Yeah, obviously, the more customers you have, the more difficult it becomes for you to manage all, feedback. So in general, companies that have multiple touch points, and these touch points can be in real life, right, in brick and mortar locations, but they can also be digital. We support both touch points. And if your customer journey has multiple touch points and you have a certain amount of customers, so it's not a small store somewhere in a small town, then you can totally profit from having an action management platform. And that's why we're pretty industry neutral, although obviously there are industries that have more complicated customer journeys and they require a lot of support, like for example finance and insurance, energy, and or utility providers in general, but telecommunications, retail, and software companies as well, because you have a lot of touch points with the customers, right?
Yeah, that's right. How does the average customer journey looks like for the customer of Zenloop, and what kind of role does the website play in that?
Yeah, well, we monitor every touch point in our customer journey for multi-touch attribution, obviously. So we obviously notice that no matter where the journey starts, say you hear about us through advertising or social media, or you meet us at an event or something like that, in one way or another, you end up on our website. So obviously your website is not the only point of sales anymore, right? So for example, LinkedIn offers now a new product page. There are directories that people use a lot, like G2, Capterra. Let's say your sales and marketing processes are very decentralized and you have lots of touch points, but eventually they all end up on the website for one reason or another. Of course, to collect more information about you, your company, make sure you're trustworthy, and collect more information about your products. So our customer journey is usually quite complex because obviously we talk to a lot of decision makers, so that involves a lot of touch points. And the website plays a pivotal role, obviously, and as mentioned before, showing trustworthiness and also presenting like at least the first information on what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. And obviously getting more like in touch with the person, just showing faces, showing, okay, there's a huge company behind it. We're working and on the product together and so on and so on. So yeah, the website still plays a pivotal role in the customer journey.
When I went through your website, zenloop.com, I noticed that you have sections for different industries. There's currently 4 different main industries that you mentioned. Do you personalize content for these industries in any way when you do content marketing?
Absolutely, absolutely. That is paramount. So currently there are 4 industries. We're working on adding more pages. It's obviously a process, but you will see a more extensive list of current customers divided by industries. Yeah, like first step in customization is the kind of communication on those pages, because every like the pain point in customer experience varies. For example, for retail, a lot of companies suffer because of lack of repeat purchase or conversion on the site, cart abandonment, stuff like that. These are not the same problems, for example, are felt in the energy sector, in which, for example, products are highly commoditized and people move from one company to the other just based on pricing and stuff like that. So it's kind of like every industry has specific pain points, and we make sure we address those pain points with specific content, which is ultra tailored for every industry. It doesn't matter if it's automotive, telecommunications, energy, retail, whatever. Yeah, everything is highly customized.
Can you share any measurable results from that type of content personalization?
Absolutely. Like, first of all, is how happy our sales representatives are, because when they start a conversation with prospects, it's not based on just our product selling. So no, it's more like a relationship, or we are the experts. We show you, we have some content that could help you already in terms of like starting your journey in customer experience management. And that could be a white paper, a recording of a webinar, or a session for our CX1 event, where we invite top industry experts in every industry. We have industry specific, like we have 5 industry specific events a year. We call them the CX1 industry related. So like we have CX1 automotive, CX1 energy, CX1 retail, and every year 5 different sectors. And we have like, that is invaluable content, because we have only the top CEOs of the best companies there, or best, head of customer experience and we can share that together with, for example, more information in terms of white papers, ebooks, best practice. We collect a lot of best practices, of course, and we can share that. So, starting a relationship based on value is different than starting a relationship based on, hey, do you need to buy my product? Because they say no. Because why? So first of all, let's see, do you have a problem? Yes. Here are some solutions. Let's dig deeper together, and let's see if it's a fit. Maybe that's enough for you.
I can imagine that it wasn't always the case that you had this type of industry segmentation. So what was the pivotal moment where you decided to go fully on segmenting based on industry?
It was more or less like a company decision at the executive level. We decided to have a very thorough approach to each industry, and we had like a member of our executive which was responsible only for making sure that everything was ready to tackle a new industry, from market research, interviews. We talked to everybody in every industry to understand key pain points, and obviously to tailor our content preparationals in terms of like collaterals and stuff like that. So we really, I guess it was more like really a strategic decision in terms of systematically approach our industry the way it's supposed to be addressed.
And do you see other companies doing this? Do you see any common mistakes that companies do when talking to their customers on the website? What are some common things?
Oh yeah, well, don't get me started. So, like I'm a buyer, so I buy a lot of products, especially software, and most of the time when I start my evaluation journey and stuff like that, I land on the website of a company, of course, maybe first touch point, maybe not, and the biggest mistakes is like scrolling for 2 hours and still not understanding. Yeah, but what do you do? Like generic statements and generic copy that is just marketing jargon. We impact your bottom line. Yeah, thank you. I hope you're done. But how? What does? So most of the time, it takes a long time to even understand what a product does, even before you. So a lot of companies focus only on what benefits they have, but we all address the same benefits, right? It's either return on investment, it's either better performance and more efficient processes. So there's obviously, so, but how? So is that a problem that I have? And then, yeah, as you mentioned, most of our websites are not personalized, and they don't subdivide content in terms of customer persona. So like we address different personas in companies, right? And that's why we're also, by the way, launching new pages that only talk about specific pain points of customer personas. But the idea is I have lots of content which could be relevant for a sales rep, but it's not, you know, relevant for the marketing team, right? So if your product is valuable for multiple customer personas, the content needs to be adapted. And the biggest mistake is you really need to understand what my issue is, right? So generic problems, we increase, I don't know, for a marketer could be we support you with, you know, lead pipeline volume generation, whatever. That is like a empty statement because it doesn't make any sense. And you don't know if that's my problem. And obviously everybody says the same. So it's not personalized at all. So no generic jargon, as my advice is really go straight to the point. We do X by doing Y, and we want to achieve Z. Let's work together, maybe check out, and then customize your content based on customer persona and pain points. So do you have this problem? Click here. Do you have this problem? Click here. Because it's like the customer journey is a lot easier if you feel like, oh yeah, that resonates with me, what is your solution for it? And do I believe you? That's the next step. But but at least, and obviously the other mistake is a lot of companies, they just randomly use their gut feeling to gauge, you know, some kind of like potential pain points and stuff like that, and they are very broad, generic, and vague. Just spend your time, do your homework, like interview your customer person a lot, like at least between, I don't know, 30 to 60 interviews with personas that might have that problem, and actually collect their words, use their words and their lingo, and also their yeah, their concerns, address their individual concerns.
It's a good point to always talk to your customers when you, especially when you're creating personalized content. What role do you see sales playing in that scenario? Because I personally, I think salespeople also have a strong view of what kind of value proposition works for this specific customer, this specific segment.
Yeah, of course. But that's part of like company alignment, right? So that there needs to be a cross-functional communication across different units, from customer success, sales, marketing, like everybody, every unit involved in communications should totally be aligned, right? And the alignment, of course, starts from the initial input, but it's also like a series of iterations based on feedback. Especially customer success managers or sales, like account executives and sales representatives, like they provide like field feedback on what the response to specific, you know, input is. And so it's about adjusting together, and it's about obviously using the same approach across like the whole customer journey. Because like if there's no consistency, right, there's a huge problem, of course, and especially if you have contrasting messages, right? And then it becomes really, really dangerous.
Yeah. How do you think companies could maybe implement this kind of personalized approach a little bit better? What are some key steps they could take?
Yeah, again, everything starts with data in. So data collection, a systematic approach on how to prepare, like the whole documentation, all preparation, how to customize every asset and every touch point, from if you have a slide deck, if you have a you know, educational content, if you have webinars, if you have phone calls, and then obviously spend time together with teams and define, okay, that's what we currently have, let's all align, let's all rehearse together and make sure it makes sense. And always having a repository of objections and say, well, that didn't work at all, I mentioned actually now that doesn't work. Or, and then evaluating, is that specifically tailored to this person we talked to? Is it specifically tailored to a segment? Maybe it's time to refine what we know about the industry with subcategories and sub industries, right? Or with people, same thing. Like maybe this specific customer group has a subset which is even partially connected, but also with unique expectations.
Yeah. And we've actually run into some companies that mention that they don't have the resources to really create personalized content. A lot of people assume that it takes one or two full-time people to do this. And so what do you think is the right stage for a company to start thinking personalized content, roughly a growth stage?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's always a matter of prioritization. I don't believe in whenever I hear the word we don't have resources, I kind of like challenge that because you always have resources. It's just a matter of prioritization. So if you show that there's a return on investment on what you're doing, and that only occurs if you have initial tests and stuff like that, but you can also collect proxies by talking to other companies and similar. So if you know there might be a potential huge return on investment, like it makes no sense not to allocate time resources into a project. And if you really don't have internal resources, nowadays there's always a way to have access to external resources, so then only becomes budget constrained. But again, it's a matter of priorities. Like it's true, if you introduce a new process, it means you have to stop something else, of course. But if the trade-off is a high return investment, why would you do that? Right? So it's either lack of priority or not addressing your priorities correctly. So there's always resources for everything. It's just like prioritizing things.
And you briefly mentioned experimentation there. How would you design a experiment for approaching personalized content?
Yeah. So basically, it's always about monitoring, like for example, the customer journey, like the speed and efficiency, something like that. You can verify what happens when you address, prospects with generic content in general, versus you can see what happens when you talk their language, go to their events, prepare documentation which is relevant, and it's an easy experiment. Actually, you can collect data in terms of like time to value, time to first meeting, and speed to conversion, and so on and so on. And that is how you usually get buy-in for initiatives, right? Carry out a proof of concept, show that it had an impact, add another project, then show that it had an impact, add another one, and then you get your street cred in your company. And when you say we need to do that, everybody will say, yeah, let's do it.
And usually when it comes to experimentation on the B2B side, a lot of marketers, they say that we don't have statistical significance in the data. How would you approach that barrier?
I would also challenge that. True, with B2B, you have a lot more data. You address people in the thousands and millions. Sometimes it depends on the company, and obviously you have more data for experimentation. Nonetheless, nowadays we have the right tools to identify like granular signals, also at a first of all in a much faster way. Also we rely on a lot of algorithms and stuff like that that can see correlation where we can't see any, right? Obviously, or can analyze data from a very different perspective, and that automatically optimize themselves based on what the algorithm knows. Of course, it's a black box, scary, nevertheless very useful. So we have the tools; they're accessible to everybody. This kind of like granular information is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and more accessible to every company at every size. And it doesn't require a lot of input to, of course, if you then carry out your own analysis and your regression analysis, you do whatever you want and you come to the wrong conclusions because you didn't take into account the limited data set. That is your problem. But there are ways nowadays to avoid that. So you can make informed decisions also in B2B. And even if you're starting, so even if you don't have hundreds and hundreds of customers or thousands of leads in the pipeline every month. So also for smaller companies.
Yeah, I think you can always also mix in some qualitative feedback to really understand, get into the depths of whether this resonated or not with the customer.
Very good point. Obviously, we eat our own dog food. So every time a customer talks to one of us at any stage, they are always involved in a different kinds of surveys with different parameters and different methodologies, but just to gauge, the quality of the conversations they had with us and something. So obviously. So we also use our product. And also in customer success, we have recurring surveys at implementation, 28 days after implementation, 3 months after QBRs, and so on. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you do anything at the moment with dynamic personalization on your website?
So the technology is there, right? So we can recognize, companies on our website. So in B2B is not like in the past, it was easier to personalize when it came to B2C, right? Also because you have more access to data, stuff like that. But we have the technology. Biggest constraints in this area are unfortunately connected to regulations in especially in the European Union, but for example, North America is getting that direction as well, data protection and so on and so on. So obviously I could potentially hyper personalize content based on not only the company you work at, but even who you are, call you by first name in theory, but and even like change everything based on your previous steps in the customer journey. Yeah, you can do it. The perception varies across different countries. For example, if you did something like that to me, I'd be the happiest man on earth. Like I'd be super, super, super excited. I know that some other people would be very offended. It would depends on the culture, right? Our company operates like also in specific European countries where, for example, privacy has the top, highest priority. And sometimes they feel like any, information that you collect directly or indirectly could be misused because it could obviously, and so they're not always open for such. So but definitely the opportunities are there.
Yeah, there's often talk about creepy level of personalization. What do you think is the right level of personalization for a B2B company buying some software?
Yeah, definitely. So, and that's the biggest problem because you would have to go really at a granular level. In some way, like if you talk to marketers and stuff like that, we are more open to that. Actually, we applaud that because I just give you an example. I never, ever, ever, sorry, but I never opened cold emails and I definitely never reply. But somebody reached out to me 2 or 3 weeks ago with an email and they mentioned, hey, I saw you are a fan of X. And so that's why I think we should talk about and so on and so on. And they actually collect information about me personally. And they found out like a personal, like a fan of a TV show, actually. And it was funny that they used that approach, right? Why did it work? And actually, it was the first time in my life that I replied to say, okay, you got my attention. And the idea is, okay, you're addressing a smaller company, so we are in the SMB space. We're not a large enterprise company, and you are talking to a marketer. So obviously, I want to reward your effort because I know how hard it is to personalize content, and I feel honored that you do that for me. You spent time doing your homework, right? You didn't send me the generic email, hey, we solved this problem. You have 15 minutes for a call. No. So it's always about rewarding good outreach, right? So I'm a fan of that, and I appreciate when people like you are like they do a good job in that. Nonetheless, it depends. Yeah, company size. Are you talking to large companies or bigger companies? Customer persona. Marketers are a little bit more open. Don't do that with the head of finance. Don't do that.
Developers.
Yeah, or developers. Although I challenge you to find information about developers. They're really good at covering their online presence, right? So they're not open. And again, check territory-wise what information and what regulations and stuff like that. Some countries are really strict, and it's a matter of finding the right balance, and always putting it, hey, let's not take it too seriously, right? It's a conversation starter, and because some people might find it creepy. Did you monitor my social media to know what I like? That's weird, actually. And yeah, in B2B, you have to have limits.
There was an instance where I talked with a potential customer. They were a design agency whose customers didn't want to reveal that all the products that they have launched are made by this design agency. So when this company used personalization, they used company name. The customers thought that, oh, you're sharing with other people that we are your customers. Not that it's just personalized for you, but it's public for everyone to see. And that was a level that was not good enough already, or that was creepy level of personalization already. And that's very interesting. And then that's something to learn for every company when they implement it.
Absolutely. If you want to use like public available information, yes, right? And but especially when you mentioned like when it comes to your partners and your customers, you always have to have a specific process in place to make sure everybody's aware of what information is shared. So for example, from silly examples, if you go to an industry page, you see different logos, right? So to show, okay, these are our customers in this segment, but this has to be discussed with the companies and everything, the thread is to be clear. And at the same time, yeah, like using publicly available information, if there are changes in, for example, management, or if there are some scoops about mergers and acquisitions, anything that can be used to hyper personalize your message can be used in B2B, and it's not like, so you have the personal personalization, hey Andy, you like this show, let's talk about it, or you have the company, hey, I heard congrats on purchasing or acquiring that company, how are you planning on expanding there in this, like, can I support it? In this case, there is a clearer border to what information you can have access to and utilize.
So when it comes to improving customer experience, how do you strike a balance between gathering customer feedback and implementing based on that, and just innovating on behalf of the customer?
Yeah, of course, obviously. So that is a struggle that every company has, like having a balance between long-term vision and obviously the customer expectations. And when it's kind of like when your long-term vision actually matches, customer expectations, the idea is that's a magic area. And in some cases, as you mentioned, right, expectations could be like interpreted in the wrong way. We want faster horses, and so let's not develop cars, right? And it's what, for example, happened, for example, with Kodak, other companies that say, hey, digital is not a solution to what we're doing. We have to do better what we're currently doing. So in that case, it's like, it's not so much interpreting, it's about having the right tools exactly to determine what is the underlying pain point, right? If I want a fast horse, is it really that I want that? Is it the only solution? Or do I just want to get faster from A to B? So framing a problem from small to larger allows you to adopt more like a design thinking kind of mentality, more like a more innovative approach. And then the next question is, okay, so the customers expressed they want a faster horse. Actually, they don't want that. They just want their underlying issue. They want to go to from A to B faster. Then my question is, okay, we're planning on creating e-scooters that, don't spend time, at a traffic light and so on and so on. Not that you can run through a track, but at least you can go faster through a line. And is that, addressing the same issue in a more creative way? Yes. So then that is the exact moment where you realize, okay, we can combine our vision with customer expectations. And it's about reframing things in a broader scheme and making sure, okay, people are good at, presenting possible solutions, but the idea is check what is the underlying pain point, not the solution that they recommend. But it's a little bit like if you go to a doctor, you say, hey, I think I have a problem with my stomach. The doctor would first go through your symptoms and ask you for specific symptoms. They decided then it's the stomach or it's something unrelated that has an effect on that, right? So yeah, it's always about analyzing signals and having the right tools to drive innovation and action management.
Sounds great. Definitely focusing on the underlying pain and then solving for the pain instead of just taking the solution as a granted, what the customer said.
It could be millions of solutions to the same problem. And it's proven by the fact that there are a lot of, for example, even in software, right? There are so many software solutions as they address exactly the same issue. It could be retention, it could be conversion, it could be, but from a very different angle and perspective. And that's your unique selling points, right? Customization and personalization, for example, is a way to drive more conversions. And it's one of the ways that need to be taken into account.